All right, let's respond to some questions. I think this will work. Okay. First one. I agree. Smells like a rat. I do. Look, this whole thing with this Uutils, I mean, seriously, I'm not going to walk back my statement. Not in the least. It does smell like a rat. Um, like when you do an LFS, I'm going to explain something here, and hopefully people can kind of get where I'm going with this. When you do like an LFS, and I've done a couple, like you'll go through and install the compiler. You'll install a few base packages, and one of those base packages is core utils. It's pretty much almost connected directly. I mean, not in a literal sense, but it is like one of the first things that you install, and it's not connected to the actual like kernel, but it is related, and it's directly related. It is one of the things that we've been using for 30 years. Is it old? Probably. But I don't think it's too old that we just throw it away, throw it in the garbage. If you want to rewrite it in Rust, I have no problem with it. And if people are cool with it, I'm cool with it. The thing is I don't want it to become like a different license. Use a GPL or LGPL license. That's all I'm asking. I'm really not asking for, I'm not asking for anything that's completely, unreasonable. Oh, this was a really bad take. And so, here it goes. One way or another, billion-dollar companies have, e.g. Java applications developed that have open source utilities included without paying the original developers. And this is both unfair and extremely dangerous. Open source is dangerous because it is unpaid. And open means there is no control over how it is made, how it is maintained, whether North Koreans can take over just like that, which does happen. Not really. So it's both unfair and dangerous. How we solve that? There was a simple solution. It would have been applied. And I'm no genius, but in the end, open source or not, the original developers should get paid. And going on that path should include safeguards for quality and safety as well. Okay, so there's a lot here that I think I should address here really quick. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. This was actually one of the main questions I really wanted to address. And like I said, thank you all for chiming in. I really appreciate it. So, most open source developers do get paid because right now, open source developers are usually corporate these days. They're not some, backyard hobbyist. 15, 20 years ago, that might have been a little different, but today, like if you look at who's making like the kernel contributions and things like that, like for example, if you take a look at who's writing the code for maybe like the Asus chipset on Linux, it's somebody who's working for Asus, or somebody who knows a lot about it, who's working for maybe a different software company. It's pretty much all corporate these days. North Koreans, well, I'll tell you this, Linus Torvalds is not allowing any North Korean to contribute to the kernel. I guarantee it. He kicked out the Russians, and you know what? And I actually kind of support him for that. I think that's great. Okay, so this one basically is kind of you can read it if you'd like. I'm not really going to chime in. Basically kind of a, conspiracy theorist kind of thing. Hello world, Justin, how are you? And all right, so couldn't anyone just fork and relicense this GPL? Not exactly. I mean, it's a good question. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. You can't just refork an MIT license as GPL. I mean, yeah, you could do it, but like then you have upstream, which is MIT, which, wouldn't fly with the FSF and that sort of thing. So I don't know what this comment was. Why are you proud of yourself for being afraid of basic vocabulary? I don't know what that meant. What he meant by that. Don't care. This is not about Linux. Linux is a kernel, a totally different project. It's not about GNU. That is an operating system that never existed but lives on as a bunch of utilities that run on Linux. That about Ubuntu, the worst OS built on Linux I've ever had the displeasure to use. Yeah, who are we to complain about that anyone implements some standard functionality in whatever language they like and publish in whatever license they like? Meh. All right. Well, see, like I said, if you're gonna publish something that is so closely related to the kernel, and that's all I'm saying, it's closely related. I'm not saying it's part of the kernel. And this is what a lot of these people are not didn't understand. You'll see in the other comments. This guy, he's a true believer. We went back and forth. Don't take this wrong way. However, if you need to go on YouTube and rant about an alternative open source license for a completely optional component on a Linux distro you don't use, you need to reevaluate your priorities. Yeah, buddy. And I'm looking at the photo here. Okay. He doesn't look like he's doing so well. I mean, I'm just saying. And I just have to say, I was already a grown man when this guy was born. Like, don't tell me what I need to do. And he also had made a lot of other insults, which I don't care. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. I am going to. So, don't tell me what I need to do. Like, seriously, like before this guy was a wet dream, I was already a grown man. Literally. All right. This is super silly. It uses a less restrictive licensing, and that's your beef. Again, that's not what it. And then it says, far from overreacting. I don't think you're concerned enough. Yeah, I think that's true. All right. The guy said, hey, the old guard declined Rust, didn't they? Well, no, they didn't. I'm not against Rust. I hope people don't understand that I'm not against Rust. I've used Rust a little bit. I've programmed in it. I'm not against it. Okay, this one was a good one that I want to. Never made clear to newbies, if anything, what, if anything, is so terrible about the MIT license. Yes, it allows commercial users to modify and keep their own improvements. But how does that affect the FOS, the free software community? New to your channel, not so sure what your contributions are to code development. Well, I have a few. I have a few to my name. Is this code you've created? If not, what right do you have to complain about someone else's choice of licensing? Again, I'm telling me. Now, you lost me completely when you said you believe in your imaginary friend that you have never seen is going to come back and save the world. As far as anyone knows, there's more likelihood that Santa Claus is real. What, you don't believe in Santa Claus? So, you lost me. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm just going to tell everybody here. If you've seen half the things that I've seen in church, you'd be a Christian. And I'm telling you, I've seen some pretty incredible things. So if you've seen half the things I've seen, that being said, it usually isn't the things that you see, they're more real than probably you could imagine. But at the same time, it's probably not what you would think of when you think of real. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've seen some pretty crazy things in church that I go, wow, that was Jeez, that was something. And and I'll just say it this way: if you're right, I don't lose anything. But if I'm right, you lose everything. Like literally everything you could possibly think to lose, you lose it. So think about it, man. Oh, I don't know, man. I guess the biggest decision you got right now is when you buy your programmer socks. Are you getting knee highs or thigh highs? That's a great question. Less talk, more writing code. I've actually thought, this would be a cool project. I don't know if I would do it. Just found your channel and earned my follow preach. Cool. I agree. This is incredibly important. All right. I don't think now this one was a good comment. I don't think Ubuntu and Canonical are the people to blame for this. It's mostly a problem of Rust developers using MIT license over everything else here. Uutils could simply use GPL2 or GPL3 and nobody would have an issue with the whole thing. This is precisely my point, actually. This is precisely my point. But because Rust developers thought to make their own operating system Redux OS under MIT license, we'll lose freedom over time. Blame on them, honestly. Redux, I guess is what it's called. Yeah, I agree. I think that's pretty... that's a fair point. And it was one that I hadn't actually thought of exactly. Well, the second point, the GPL2 or GPL3. Yes. Like, nobody would say anything, literally, if they used a GPL2 or 3 license. I agree with your paywall concern, though. Yes. A lot of people, the perception of how licensing worked might be a factor for the change over a new rewrite. I mean, they thought they could close source it if they could get away from the GPL. There's all kinds of projects that were under GPL but changed to closed source. That being due to that the contributors all agreeing to closed source software. If you don't want the core utils to be closed source, the best way forward might be to get really good at Rust and become a contributor if you really believe in it. Yeah, they won't allow me to be a contributor. I guarantee it. Guarantee. I'm not really great at Rust, but I've messed around with it. Yeah. If you may not be about what they want, I think there's a certain agency with a lot of centralization and dubious intelligence behind this. If we know that they were the progenitors of the woke movement which permeated the Rust community, now at large parts of the Linux world, we know they've always hated free software, primarily because it produced easily obtainable encryption software that they can't easily insert backdoors into. I can't prove it, but my best bet is that they're at least involved. Of course, there could also be another similar agency involved, one from a country that is real who had a blackmail ring going on with a man who didn't off himself. Oh, wow, that's funny. They're wrapped up in a lot of this kind of stuff too, and even if they targeted some people at MIT, that's probably tangential. Oof. I don't know which one what part of the video they're referring to, but okay. I mean, all right, the biggest issues that we're always going to be replaced. I mean, that's just how the world works. Every 20 years, there's a new generation. Linux has been around for 35 years now. Children, metaphorically, of the first generation are now trying to make their own space. How can these founders maintain their positions posthumously? I think your assessment is correct, but how are we going to stop it? I mean, the actual pain path to success. What is the... Please stop making software better. I mean, is kind of what you sound like. It's like, I get it, I'm on your side, but what do you truly think can be done about it? Okay, so very good question, actually. I'm glad actually somebody raised this point, because I think it's a valid point, and I think it is. I think it's totally valid here. And so very good question, actually. Um Sorry for not including your names and stuff. I'm trying to get through this as quick as possible. There was just a few comments that I just wanted to go over that I thought were really thoughtful. Some that weren't so thoughtful that I just wanted to respond to. So this one is a really good question. What can we do about it? Because we don't want to sound like we're saying, please stop making software better. Well, the first thing is, I do agree. I think that you stop being a fanboy, right? Like, if you're a fanboy, that means okay, everything written in Rust is bad. I don't think we can be those people, right? So I think, though, that we have to have a position, like when it comes to not when it comes to the core packages that you would install alongside the Linux kernel. You just say, hey, it has, at the very least, has to be a GPL2 license. You could even say an LGPL2 license. I would be fine with that. But an MIT license, no way, man. And I think that's the only way you could actually tackle this and have some credibility without sounding like a complete fanboy. And so that's a great question. Dude needs to get his meds adjusted and switch to FreeBSD. Believe me, man, I'm not far from it. If I hadn't just found uBlue the other, a couple weeks ago, I think I would. With all due respect, the GNU and its decades of amazing effort, they didn't even try to adapt to this new world. They didn't even accept GitHub PRs. Yes, this makes a difference in terms. They should have started the Rust rewrite. Dude, do you know how busy those people are? I mean, honestly, I can tell you. I can tell you how busy some of these people are. I know some of the developers, some of the maintainers in the Linux kernel, and even just downstream. They are super busy. Sometimes they're just too busy to do it. They literally, even though there's probably, 2,000 or 3,000 people that contribute to the kernel pretty regularly. And there's actually there's more than that. There's probably 30 or 40,000. But the people who take a look at the source code, who make changes, make sure everything compiles correctly, that sort of thing. Yeah. I remember Lens going closed source after efforts were put in. They just took it down to sell it on their own. I don't blame anybody for trying to make a buck, though, I don't see the problem here. We have thousands of projects on GitHub that have been forked, with some being rewritten in other languages, including Rust. The GNU core utils aren't going away. This will simply be another alternative. Given the level of outrage, it probably won't gain much traction except with the Rust promoters. So be it. A little competition never hurt anyone. Yeah, except I do think it will gain a lot of traction with the wrong people. If you're not an Ubuntu user, I failed to see how this change affects you. Are you serious? All of these projects actually get morphed. I mean, look, this is going to be in the Arch repos real soon. They'll adopt it. They'll adopt it in Fedora without a doubt. This will be the de facto a standard. No. All I'm saying is change the license. Let us read your source code. Now, this one is a kind of a rant, but basically saying, hey, the real problem as I see is if we tolerate support immoral antisocial behavior, GPL tries to secure the world of software by enforcing its moral argument. The effect of it has to be rigid, but this rigidity removes a lot of the spirit of sharing and freedom. At the same time, we accept that for-profit organizations have no moral boundaries and it can only be curtailed in the realm of legality. We do the same in politics and fail just as badly. Yeah, for sure. I always sympathize with Richard Stallman and his vision of friendly cooperation and strong resistance, but I never liked the rigidity of the GPL. Neither did that actually work out. See, here's the thing. He's missing the forest for the trees. The GPL is kind of like the Christian doctrine, right? What's the Christian doctrine? That we all broke the law, basically the 10 Commandments, the moral law, and then Jesus paid the fine for us, right? He needed to pay the fine. Well, with the GPL, it's kind of very similar in that we have a standard here that we'll never attain, that we'll never live up to, but it points us to why it's important. And then we can make movements towards that, even though we'll never actually quite get there. Not wrong. That's why more people need to speak up and fight back. Yep. Or somebody said it's already split. And I actually kind of think that's true. I think it's already like people have already drawn the line in the sand and said what side they're on. So I'm on Linus Torvalds' side. Like, I don't want to use a 14-year-old laptop, and so I don't think there should be like this rigid thing where everybody is saying, hey, you gotta do it this way. I'm not that guy, all right? Nobody's trying to remove Linus or other engineers. This has nothing to do with politics. Most devs now just prefer more liberal licenses. That's it. And we're never going back to the old days because the world has turned that corner a long time ago. It is never going back, GPL or not. Core Utils being in Rust is done because it is safer. No, it's not. Not when it comes to a basic rudimentary program like Core Utils. You can't tell me it's safer. Yeah, that is such a red herring. It's so stupid. Dude, seriously, if you're not a programmer, STFU. Like, literally, STFU, because I am. And I'm going to tell you that these are very rudimentary programs. And if you don't even know, like, how you would go about writing that program or have any clue as to how to write that program, then you can't say that you know that it's safer, because I can tell you that, yes, okay, out of the box, Rust is safer because it has memory checks. Okay. And just because the same memory checks are not there by default in C, for example, there's workarounds, man. Every single programming language has workarounds. This is not just this. I'm about to lose my freaking mind when I see stuff like this, because it's like people obviously don't know what they're talking about. And yes, you know what? The world of open source not ending. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because you're going to murky up the waters where we have no more freedom and everything's behind a paywall and everything is behind, so if I can't see your source code, I can't duplicate it. And if I can't duplicate it, I can't contribute to it. What you're going to do is you're going to basically cut people off at the knees. That's what Linux did. This is why people what people don't get. The world of Linux basically produced a whole new world of coders, a whole new world of software developers. If it weren't for Linux, like, people wouldn't know how to do anything because there's no, like, they didn't have, the access to source code. Like, unless you get like a CS degree and work in software and work in this particular industry for like 10 years, can you like write a basic program? That's the way the world worked before. No, we're never going back to that. But that's what they want to go back to. And to a certain degree, I mean, I can't blame them. I mean, seriously, like, because of AI, I think all of our jobs are going away. So I get it. Yeah. And functionality isn't protected by open source code. It would be hard to claim open source translation. Rust is too different. I've never said it was. These utilities are proprietary. Unix GNU was created to make Unix-like operating systems. They take a look at POSIX. You'll find the standards documenting. See, and that's the other thing is I do think that whatever's written anywhere near the kernel needs to be POSIX compliant. Like, it just has to. Seriously, this is what gave us our freedom in the first place. This is what made this all special. I'm not an expert in licensing, so I have a question. If you rewrite a GPL program in a different language but keep all the exact functionalities, and how do you avoid GPLing your program? And yeah, oh geez, so that was the reason. So yeah, you wouldn't be able to, yeah, okay. I got it. The issue with Linux isn't that it's an actual OS. Your distribution is OS, which happens to have a Linux kernel. There's no core part of the operating system. The kernel's the core part. And then the stuff directly related to the kernel. The first things that you basically install and compile. Ubuntu is just another word for Windows at this point. Good point. I kind of think that too. If people want proprietary everything, there's still Windows, then they shouldn't be surprised to pay huge amounts of money just for connectors and automation tools. I think many don't understand the incentives. The quality of free software is a result of... So there was a lot of anti-free software comments here, and I'm not going to get into them. I already read one of them, I think. And that's pretty much it. Freedom must be constantly defended. You can never take it for granted. That's just how it is. Thomas Jefferson, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And there were more comments that I didn't get to, but I think this is pretty much sums it up. And so I think I've made my position clear, and I think I've made it even more clear than I needed to make it, if that makes sense.